evening. I'm Dan Terrace, Director of the Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life, and it's my privilege to moderate the conversation we're now going to get to have as a community with these two inspiring women. Thank you so much. Those were terrific talks. I can't really believe that you are not always here at Brandeis. Eliza, I would expect to see you at our alumni gatherings. The kind of work and energy you have sounds exactly like Brandeis alumni. Judy, I'm expecting to see you at the next faculty meeting. Because again, the work that you do and the way you talk about it and the way you integrate your academic work with kind of action in the field sounds a lot like our faculty here at Brandeis. So it's really great to have you here, and you really exemplify the spirit of the university and of DEIS Impact, and so it's really perfect to have you, and we're able to learn from you, and now able to talk together for a little while. So the way this is going to work is I'll kind of start the conversation here, and then work in some questions from all of you out there. There are three of our outstanding DEIS Impactors out in the audience with their blue sweatshirts and their microphones. Shelby, Nusrat, and Leah, they are there. What you want to do over the next few minutes is kind of catch their attention, and they'll come towards you with the microphone. I'll then call on you as time permits. But I'll start off with a little bit of a conversation while you're catching their attention, and then open it up for further conversation. So, first of all, thank you for telling us the story of THRIVE-Gulu and your work and your involvement there, and giving us a real sense of the personal connections that you've developed with the people there, that sense of solidarity as social justice, which really resonates, I think, here, and that inspiring message of taking people from victim to survivor to thriver, again, really resonates. I guess first, it would be great if you could bring us up to date on THRIVE-Gulu and Gulu now, today. What's happening there? What's happening in the program? What's happening in the region? Give us a little sense of the kind of here and now of Gulu, THRIVE-Gulu, and some of the people that you've been working with there.
President.
Okay, okay, I'm looking at Eden because he just got back 2 weeks ago. Well, this has been a really good month. In fact, I told Marcy, I said, thank heaven we're coming now and not 3 months ago, because we've turned some corners that we were nervous about 6 months ago. One of the big challenges of having an NGO, of course, is fundraising, and that's something that Eliza has some experience with, but none of the rest of us have had much experience with that, so it's been difficult. But we were able to get enough funding that we were able to buy land 2 years ago, so we have an acre of land. And then this past year, we had enough money to build a security fence around the acre. And we didn't want to build a security fence around the acre. That was not one of our priorities. But one of our other things, besides from victim to survivor to thriver, one of the other mottos that we have for ourselves is that we believe that there should be nothing about us without us. And so we have always asked our beneficiaries, what do you want us to do? Now, Eliza mentioned that in her talk. There are probably over 180 NGOs in Gulu. Gulu is a strange place. It's in some ways, it's a very beaten down looking city, but it has a few main thoroughfares, although the roads are not good in those thoroughfares, where there is electricity, and you see a lot of motor scooters and trucks and cars, and people with cell phones, and so there's this little injection of modern technology, but it's still very, very backward looking. So anyway, we have a staff of 4 there, and we pay them salaries, and they're great staff. I'm ringing on my, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. What is this?
Your mic is just kind of
okay.
buzzing.
So anyway, we have consulted them, and we said, we would like to complete a building on the property, which we now have done, but at the time they said, not until we get a security wall. And so this goes to the other answer to the question about what is Gulu like. Gulu is very safe for foreigners, but for people who live there, there's still a lot of disrespect for people that were really child soldiers in the war and don't have families and clans to support them. A lot of the women are single mothers that support one another, but they are looked down upon by a lot of people. And so they actually often are harassed and harmed just by other people in Gulu. So they said, before we do any kind of building on our land, we want to have a security wall. So we now have a beautiful $30,000 security wall that surrounds it, and it's got guards, and it's a lovely wall, and people are very happy there.
Another thing too, we have one of the programs that we offer is computer literacy, and so we've had donations of beautiful laptops and soon to be PCs that are coming, and so for security for those things, it's also important. It's not so much to keep people out, but to protect the things inside.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's even probably, that would be easier for me to understand. Anyway, so we're getting a second group of computers, and then there were, I don't know how long an answer to give. This land had belonged to a group of women who during the war were living in IDP camps. Thousands and thousands of Ugandans during the war were forced into huts that were built about 12 to 18 inches apart, and they lived inside of literally barbed wire fences on very occasional food supplies that came from the United Nations. It was a dreadful life, almost as bad as the violence of war. Those were destroyed, or the effort was made to destroy them after 2006. But during the war, a group of women got this land, and they decided that no matter how much they had to risk in terms of violence, they were going to build, or they were going to raise vegetables. So this was a women's farm. And now they're actually growing trees in a different part south of Gulu. They wanted to sell the land, and so we have this land. And when I met the women that sold it to us, I sobbed and cried because I thought, this land is holy land. It has been somehow anointed by the sweat of these brave women during that war. So we have good land, and that land is now the place where we have our computer center, and then we did another fundraiser for electricity. We have electricity coming in, and soon we hope we have water and even flush toilets, which is a big deal. We have pit latrines, but we're headed for the flush toilet stage, and this is very exciting. So back to the computer literacy program. The computer literacy program is not so much a school to teach computers to young people as it is a place where people learn enough literacy to have, this is very important to people. And Eliza mentioned communication. People wanted to have an email address. They wanted to have a Facebook page. In fact, this makes me very emotional. When you ask people what you want and they're hungry, you expect them to say a bag of rice. They say, I want a Facebook page. Now, is that trivial? No. They feel still invisible. You know, we were ignored during the war, we're ignored now. We want a Facebook page. We want to be able to say we have a friend out there that writes back to us when we write. So we have a computer literacy program where we teach basic computer skills, and we're expanding it to the point where people will be able to write first paragraphs, and then we hope little booklets of their life stories. And this is a fairly traditional group therapy kind of thing where that is often used with people who are suffering from trauma. So storytelling, my life story, now I'm going to write it into words, and would you help me put it into a booklet? So that's kind of what's going on now. We have other projects called Women Empowerment Projects where our Lucy, that I love, teaches soap making, candle making. We've given goats, people do goats, and Rose has chickens as well as does her peanuts. And so we have other projects because we also believe that being self-sustaining and self-sufficient is also part of having one's dignity and recovery.
We had a filmmaking course too, surprisingly. No, but people, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen some videos that were made of child soldiers, and one of the things you mentioned, our motto is nothing about us without us, and it's one thing to have somebody come in and tape your story and edit it the way they want to, and yes, maybe you sign a release, but when you're 12 years old and you sign a release and that now is out on a world stage and you're still in a sense in danger, because if the wrong person saw your video, you could be in trouble. So our mission, our initiative, we had flip cams donated, and we gave them the flip cams, and we said, shoot your story, your video of what the story you want to tell. And you may be surprised, they wanted to do a Bob Marley flash mob in the center of town, but it was this great thing. And that they then took it, and we had software, and they edited it on the laptops, and that was a big initiative that went over well. But we're definitely we're new. This is our first startup or startup nonprofit, and always learning. And like you mentioned, fundraising is a huge part of it. And I've tried to do some social media fundraising myself, and have been successful. But even $30,000 a year on my birthday, I did a 30-30-30 campaign where we tried to raise $30,000 for my 30th birthday on December 30th, and it was literally to buy the plot of land. And I tweeted my face off for about a month, and I hit this moment where I thought my little barometer was not really going anywhere in the first couple of weeks, and I thought, why isn't this happening? And I took a shameless pill, and I just started hitting at Oprah, at Kim Kardashian, at Kanye, and I just really got loud, and I thought, what am I ashamed of? I'm asking for something that's going to help people, and I found that the more specific you are, even in Twitter when you have 140 characters, and even for some of you with your own initiatives, when you're going to reach out to someone, try to not put lots of emoticons or exclamation marks. If you can say, I'm this, I would invite you to come here, or just try to get creative and jam as much as you can in. And if you keep hitting people, they do start to respond. George Lopez, Kevin Smith, all these random people started responding, and we made the money to buy the land. And then we did another fundraiser that raised money for the electricity this year. We got creative, and Cheryl, one of our board members, got creative, and she said, let's do a Holiday Lights for THRIVE-Gulu campaign, and it was $8,000, but we wanted to bring light to Thrive, and people could get behind that and see that would be something that was worthy of their Christmas donation. And I ended up also going, I'm on the board, and because I had done some fundraising, my mother went, well, you're the fundraising committee. I was like, okay, you can't say no to mom. So I went on UCLA and took an extension course on principles of fundraising. And so I've just finished the course, and I'm now really focusing on, like you said, if you don't know something about it, you can still jump in, and we're building, and we're now trying to find more funding, because we have programs operating, but we could always be bigger and better.
Let's open it up. I'm going to start over with Nusrat. Please identify yourself, speak clearly, and keep your question or remark short.
Hi, I'm Suzanne. I'm a senior here. I'm an Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies major. My question is for Eliza. I was wondering how your background as an artist has helped you help people cope with trauma, and if you've used that.
Well, first, as I said a little bit, I tripped and fell at my brother's audition. I never wanted to be Punky Brewster when I was a little kid at all. I always just envisioned I would follow in my mother's footsteps and travel the world and help people. But when I had the opportunity and I started to get the chance to travel and meet people, it started to make sense that the best way to play characters and play other people is to know things about them. And so you have to be a good listener, and you have to be an active listener and ask questions. And so, I mean, similar to sort of how you would interview someone just as an actor about how to play them, I think with an NGO, and especially our NGO, where everything is about how do you want, this is your story we're telling, and this is your life, we want to help you, and we're never trying to impose the ways that we think you should be helped. And we're not a church, nothing against churches, but we're not, you don't have to join our church for us to help you. We're here to hear it from you. So I think that kind of communication and just having people share their stories with me helps me be a better story sharer and teller.
Shelby?
Hi, I'm Aaliyah. I'm a freshman, and I'm a women, gender studies, and history major. And I was just wondering, me being personally invested in women's issues and politics, where do you, this is a question for either of you, do you see the women's issues, like what are they specifically, the main ones that you think we need to solve and we need to address either in Uganda or in the United States today, and what solutions do you think we need to take to address these issues?
Professor?
I was very helped by studying a subfield of women's studies, which is called inclusive security, which has to do with one of the pieces of that is an acknowledgement that very often security is defined in a way that completely ignores the women in the situation. In other words, whether you're taking Bosnia or whether you're taking, northern Uganda, securing the peace may make it safer for some people, but often the women are just as unsafe in the secured peace as they were in the war. Did I say that again, or did you get that? Women are often as unsafe in the secured peace after the peace treaty is signed than they were during the war. So that's hard. Even though I understand that, that's still hard for me to remember, because Joseph Kony is still at large, and there are all sorts of conspiracy theories, and some of them are conspiracies, so that's another story, but he's no longer in northern Uganda. It's very easy to think that Gulu is a totally safe place. It is for you and me. Eden goes there a lot. Eden's completely safe. He's not a bit worried. But women in Gulu are not safe. It's not because they're being attacked by Kony's LRA soldiers, or even the corrupted Ugandan military that was equally, maybe not equally, but was also involved in the violence against women during those wars. But women are still, in a sense, they're treated like, well, if they were child soldiers and sex slaves during the war, why don't we just continue treating them that way? And so it's hard for women who are from Gulu, even if they're mothers, and even if they are working and all these things, it's hard for them to feel that the community values protecting them. So that is a women's issue. I mean, it's a human rights issue, it's a people's issue, it's a women's issue. Safety is a women's issue. And of course, we've heard a lot in the debate since the horrific rape and murder in India about people who first jumped on the bandwagon and say, oh, India is such a terrible place, rape, it happens there all the time. And then lots of people then saying, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot of violence against women in safe places in the United States, and they just simply are not reported or acknowledged as important, etc. So violence against women is a women's issue that I've learned more about because of this experience, even though I've taught about it for years, both in terms of the United States and in other places. That is a very big thing. And then the other thing I'll just say is that as a feminist, your initial readings in any course explain all the ways that women are simply really, in the eye of the reader or whatever, they're really not often acknowledged in a body of an essay or a piece of information. They're really not acknowledged, and you just ignore the fact that you're talking about women, because you really seem to be talking only about men. Never mind, I'll just give you the example and you'll understand it. I've read so much about child soldiers. I studied them. I met some. I felt like I really knew who child soldiers were. And when those two groups of child soldiers walked into the hotel in Kampala, I don't know about you, Wanjiku, no, but Eden has said he was surprised. Eliza was surprised. We were surprised that they were mostly women. Now, part of it was that a nun was bringing them down. She has a school in Gulu which teaches just girls. So all of her former child soldiers were girls. But then I went back and did research, and at least 45% of all the world's child soldiers are girl child soldiers. Who knew? Who still knows? It's out there. You can Google it. But I still think of child soldiers as boys. Now, is it a great distinction to be a child soldier? No, it's a horrible thing. But it's important for us to know that these images of, like they talk about in the military, U.S. military, soldiers are women soldiers as well as men soldiers. Combat people and child soldiers are women as well as men. And within the child soldier community, if you want to call it that, I'm not saying that women are treated more badly than men, but they have some different experiences. And one of them is that they come out of the war and not necessarily more traumatized. I mean, we could debate that, because all the women were raped. All of them. They also have babies with them. It's harder to start your life over if you've got 2 or 3 babies that you've brought out of the war. And so you have babies that come from rape. I mean, the stories that I've heard about things like, I think I'm lucky, said one of the child mothers. I think I'm lucky because the man that owned me when I was in the bush died in the war. So he's never going to come after his children. So I said, you mean for those soldiers who got amnesty after the war and they're now walking around in Gulu, they come after their children sometimes? Oh, yes. There's so many pieces to this. So the women's pieces too.
Let me follow up with a question about child soldiers. It interests me because it relates to the work of our center. The first conviction in the International Criminal Court was not a Uganda case. It was a case in the Congo, but it was a conviction for the recruitment of child soldiers specifically. The International Criminal Court has obviously, there are indictments out against people in Uganda, Joseph Kony and others there. Does the work of the ICC seem to matter to people on the ground in Uganda? Is it relevant? Is it irrelevant? Is it viewed as impotent? Does international justice as opposed to social justice kind of matter from your perception working on the ground there?
That just made me think of, there's a great documentary about Uganda and child soldiers. It's called Uganda Rising, and you can find it online. Kevin Spacey narrated it. It came out a few years ago, but I remember it was already 2 years after we had come home. Has anybody seen this Uganda Rising movie? And one of the things that they covered was how the international, how the courts would punish former child soldiers, and how the Acholi people are the main people in Gulu that were attacked, and they had all those videos of the Acholi way of reconciliation, and sometimes it was tribal. Sometimes it was they had an egg and a stick, literally, and they believed that for somebody to be redeemed for redemption, they would do these tribal things, and they felt that for them that was what they would rather see than see somebody locked up. I mean, so it's hard to speak for people when you have an entire culture and you have it's a gray area.
Yeah.
Can I just add
Sure.
something too? In Uganda, the ICC is a very controversial issue at every level of society. I mean, it's a big issue in the government. Some people are furious that Museveni asked that Kony be indicted by the ICC, because then he was less likely to be approached with a peace treaty. I mean, we were friends with a woman named Betty Bagombe, who was one of the first people to march into the bush. A woman, Betty Bagombe. You can look her up. She's amazing. But she felt that to some extent it made it harder to negotiate with him. Now it turns out he's such an awful guy that negotiating with him didn't get very far. But the other piece of it is that when people are indicted for war crimes it raises the issue for these soldiers as to who's the soldier and who's the victim. There are lots and lots of, I mean, when you think about, I mean, literally, Rose, even longer than Lucy, Rose was in the bush for 10 years. She can tell you about every year. That's real. So if somebody is a boy child soldier, he's abducted at, let's say, at age 11, goes into the bush, is there for 10 years, then he's now 21, then he becomes a lieutenant in some military. His mother still thinks of him as an abducted child. Do we indict all these brutal killers? Or are some of them, I mean, I understand the debate over restorative justice anyway, but it gets complicated when you're talking about abducted kids that become the killers, and what should be the legal punishment for them. So the ICC is debated not just in terms of its effectiveness, but also whether or not it's the right tool to bring into situations where justice is so complicated.
Powerful issue. We have yes.
Bernadette Bruton. I teach in Near Eastern and Judaic Studies, and I had a question for Judy Dushku. I was struck by the fact that you began that the impetus for your thinking began with your students at Suffolk who had experienced sexual violence and were recovering from the trauma of that, and that you then took the model to Uganda. And I'm wondering, what are the ways in which you can now take what you have learned from people in Uganda back to students at Suffolk or back to students at Brandeis who experienced such trauma?
Thank you, and thank you for that question. I just would like to say, though, I don't feel like I took a model to Uganda. I mean, I took a curiosity, because I wasn't sure that any model here would work. In fact, I was actually criticized by some of my colleagues when I was teaching this course. They said, shouldn't you do more of this? And then we also had an argument with a psychiatrist who was Ugandan in Gulu that he would only help us if we let him have a room in our center and distribute antidepressants. And we said, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but not at our center. We don't do medical things. We're not qualified. Plus, we're not sure that it's effective, especially in these situations of group trauma. So I don't feel like I went with a model. I felt like I went with a model as a jumping off point, but I wasn't bringing it. So, but in terms of the other side of that, thinking about Uganda, all I could think of was the storytelling piece. And all I could say to them, I was very nervous because I felt enormous responsibility. I tried to get them to go to the counseling center. All I could do was say, you have got to talk about this more. And what I would like you to do is to start writing about it. And if you want to write it to me, my kids call me Mama. Actually, I'm called Mama Judy because my wonderful daughter-in-law comes from a Hispanic background. Her grandmas are called Mama. So my grandchildren named me Mama, and so I'm now Mama Judy at Suffolk, in Uganda, in my family. I'm Mama Judy. So I told these students, call me Mama Judy and write down your stories. And I'm not going to show them to anybody unless you want me to someday. I'm just going, it's good for you to write them down. So that's as far as I've gotten. It hasn't formalized at all. I would love to talk to other people who are in my situation and who have that question. I'm simply not in an environment where anybody else is really interested in doing that. I'm grateful that you are, and if I could ever be helpful, I would, but I haven't done anything to share that or, but thank you.
I'm sure there are a lot more questions that people would have. We could probably talk for a long time, but I'm mindful that you volunteered to do a little more work after the formal program closes, so I'm going to call on my fabulous colleague, Marcy McPhee, to close our program.
Hi, Marcy.
And I'm going to call on my fabulous colleagues from the DEIS Impactors, Todd and Gloria and Sarah and Amanda. We have gifts for the Dushkus.
Do I get one of those awesome sweatshirts?
You get one of those awesome sweatshirts.
Oh, wonderful.
We have for you framed posters from this DICE Impact Week.
Thank you very much.
And your own DICE Impact hoodie, not available in any store.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if you too are interested in a DICE Impact hoodie, you probably noticed on that yellow evaluation/raffle ticket that's the first prize is a DICE Impact hoodie signed by Eliza and Judy. Second prize, lunch with Judy and me. Students told me that this would be a draw. And third prize, some of those Ugandan beads of hope and tote bags made by THRIVE-Gulu participants. So take your yellow evaluation/raffle tickets and put them in the basket as you leave. And hope you'll join us at some of the other events during this DICE Impact Week, continuing through Monday with the So Just Leadership Forum, the capstone event of DICE Impact, where over 30 alumni will tell you how their Brandeis Club leadership and activism involvement became a social justice career, including, can't resist, Andrew Slack, will you give a stand up? And founder of the Harry Potter Alliance, class of '02, former Sorensen Fellow, can't resist saying, who will not only be at that So Just Leadership Forum sharing how he turned his late night snack with Andrew Slack into the Harry Potter Alliance, a few steps in between, as well as the Harry Potter Alliance final event that same evening. So thank you, Andrew. So I am delighted that Judy and Eliza Dushku have agreed to stay for quick photos and signing in Alumni Lounge on the second floor of this building. So please come up the staircase by the chaplain's office in this way and go down the staircase by the communications office this way. Please be quick, realizing that as much as they would love to have an individual visit with each of you, and while Eliza is still on Hollywood, California time,
I just have one more thing. We just got a note. Can I shout it out?
uh-huh.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are looking for volunteers and interns at THRIVE-Gulu. It's an awesome place to work and intern and volunteer for the following positions, and we really need them, and we will work. You'll have my email address, and we'll talk. It's
Whoa.
web content developers, donor database, grant writers, big one, newsletter editor, a designer, and fundraisers. So we're going to put this out there, and it has Eden's contact information. And if anybody's interested, this would be huge. And the last thing that I just want to say is, you know, sometimes you wonder, like, well, I want to do something good, and I really want to give back, but how do I do it? Just do it. Just how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just take the first bite, and then you do something the next day. You do something the next day, and just become a part of the group. And watch how awesome you feel and what awesome you're doing. And so honestly, we need help, and please join us, and this is a great way to.
And if you don't see that flyer, just email ethics@Brandeis and we'll connect you.
Yes.
Did I miss anything else while I wasn't looking? All right, so thank you to Judy and Eliza. One more hand.